You see, I grew up at a time, I went away to university when there was no television in my hometown. So I lived for many years not watching television at all. And it was only when I happened to do a program for a university I was teaching at in 1962 that I realized people watch this and they are very interested. And I thought, this is a powerful way to educate people. And I was concerned in the 1960s with the huge impact of science and technology on our lives. And the public didn't seem to understand what the implications were. I was a geneticist, and I was very concerned about the implications of genetic engineering and cloning and some of these techniques that were now being proposed to use on human beings. So that really got me interested in using television as a medium of education. And then as I became more involved and time went on, I began to see that the environment was the issue of our time. So,
well, was it expected that the people would take to your programs the way they did?
Well, I was very fortunate. In 1969, I was asked to become the host of a program that had been started in 1960 called The Nature of Things. And it became an hour program, and it had a very big audience. People love nature. So natural history was a big part of this show. I was much more interested in science and technology, but it became a very popular program, and we were able to explore issues of satellites in space and birth control pill and overpopulation and many, many issues to a large audience.
You could take it away from the academia to actually an average human being and get them involved.
I was very lucky. My father was born in Canada, but he's Japanese. And he always said, you have to be able to speak in public. Japanese are very bad. They're so shy. And he said,
pretty much like many Bhutanese.
Well, he trained me to be a public speaker. And then when I started doing television, he was very proud of me, and he would watch all my programs, and he would call me at the end of the program and say, well, that was good, but I didn't understand what you meant. And he said, I'm your father, I love you, and if I can't understand it, what do you think of the average person that doesn't even know who you are? You better make it better next time. So whenever I'm on television, I always try to imagine I'm talking to my father. So it better be clear. It better be very simple. He only went through high school. He wasn't an educated man, and he's my audience.
And your involvement with Bhutan now and with the new development paradigm, what pushed you to get involved in this?
I had heard of Bhutan for many years and been very, very excited by it. You see, I've been involved in environmental issues now for over 50 years. And although we've had many victories, we've built parks and reserves, we succeeded in stopping dams and drilling for oil. 30 years later, we're still fighting the same battle again. So a dam we stopped on the Peace River in British Columbia 35 years ago, they are now building it in British Columbia. What does that tell us? We didn't change the way we look at the world. The reason we didn't want the dam was because that meant retarding this river, flooding the land, and changing the ecology of the area. But now we say, oh no, we need that energy, we've got to get development of the mining industry, we have to build a dam. And we haven't seen that we have to take our surroundings very, very seriously. And that is the paradigm shift that Bhutan has been talking about. The well-being of all life means well-being for human beings. And the acknowledgement of that is a huge shift. Now, in the dominant culture around the world, we think the world is ours to use in whatever way we want. And there isn't that sense of respect or even veneration for Mother Nature. And so we become very, very destructive. Now, many environmental organizations have been fighting to try to bring about the change, but the economic system has become so powerful, and corporations are so powerful that we're just like little ants in this battle. And we know that we need to have that big change in the way we all look at the world. And here is tiny Bhutan, this tiny country. Because it has been isolated for so long, Bhutan has been able to come out into the world and see the reality of the world in a way that we can't see anymore. and has had the courage to say, we think the world needs a different way of seeing development, and we would like to present a new pattern of development. For me as an environmentalist, this is the most exciting thing that I've heard in 50 years.
You heard of Bhutan, you heard about GNH, and then you are finally here in the country now. And as an environmentalist yourself, you've seen Thimphu. What do you think? I mean, is Bhutan living what you're trying to share with the world?
Well, I think the people I've met in Bhutan will say, we are not there. Bhutan, since opening up, has become, I just look at in my room, I can watch 80 programs, 80 stations of television in my room. And yet 15, 20 years ago, you had no television at all. True. And what does television do? It's telling you, buy, look at our cars, look at our clothes, buy. But this is the very thing that we're fighting against in the developed world. So Bhutan is a country that has suddenly exploded into this world. And I heard from people here that young people want to move away from the farm, from the traditional. They want to go to the cities because it's more exciting and make a little more money. So Bhutan itself is now seeing this threat of the paradigm out there coming in. So the Bhutanese authorities here are saying, please develop a program for happiness and well-being that we can now try to be in Bhutan. Because otherwise, Bhutan, it seems to me, will rush after the same problems you have in India and China and everywhere else. I think you have this huge advantage of being like an island community. You're surrounded by mountains. And that itself gives you a much stronger sense of limits and being much more self-sufficient.
But then, of course, there is the reigning argument. I mean, does it have to be a versus relationship versus economic forces around us versus modernization and the way we're trying to live, the GNH way, that is, not too much of anything? Can we have a harmonious relationship? Can we marry what is in par with what we want to do with the new paradigm as well as with GNH?
Well,
do you think that's possible?
I personally don't think it's possible if the economic system that we buy into is the current one. You see, we have now globalized a fundamentally flawed economic system. For one thing, if you look at the air, where in our economic system do we put a value on air? To me, air is sacred. Every one of us has to breathe air every minute of our lives until we die. And yet we use air as a garbage can. Every car, every factory, everybody is putting stuff into the air as if it's free. Just use it as a garbage can. And the economic system only recognizes the value of air when we have to pay to clean it up. So it's the same with water. We use, and nature, what is the price of pollination? Pollinating flowering plants. All of the insects that pollinate flowering plants make it possible for animals like us to live. If the pollinators, and right now there's a crisis around the world with honeybees, they're dying, we don't know why. If all of the pollination disappears, we will disappear. The whole
it's all part of the ecosystem.
Terrestrial ecosystem will collapse. Without pollination, it will change fundamentally. And yet the economic system doesn't have any value. It doesn't say how important. And so we spray chemicals all over that kill all of the insects without worrying about the effect on pollination. So the economic system has not got nature included as a part of what it is.
But let me interrupt you here. I mean, how do we negate that? Because the effect of the economic system is so direct, so immediate, that people feel it's them. While what you're talking about, pollination, you feel so far removed from it because it doesn't directly impact you as such. And then most human beings, now we're living in a situation where everything is so immediate. And only when it is immediate, it has an impact or bearing on what our lives are. So when it doesn't have an immediate bearing, that is the biggest challenge then. How do you convince people?
We have become a very impatient animal. And I think that the way we do that is that we think back on our ancestors and give thanks to them for the world that we've received today. And then we think ahead, not to the next paycheck or the next iPhone that you buy, but we think ahead to our children and grandchildren and think about what are we going to leave them? And we have to see that we live. This is where education is a fundamentally important thing. The new paradigm demands that we go back to the way people have always looked at nature. We regard Mother Nature as life, giving us life. That we worship Mother Nature, we thank Mother Nature. Now we're cut off. In my country, 85% of Canadians live in big cities. In a big city, your biggest priority is your job. So you're always worried about the economy. And we forget that air, water, soil, the rest of living things are making our lives possible. So we have to rediscover that sense of belonging and connection with all things on the planet.
That's why only and only the new paradigm can make a difference.
I think that we can't tinker and say, oh, well, we need some new taxes here so that they won't pollute the water. I mean, we need those indicators. But it's a mind shift that says, wait, you can't do that to the water. The water is sacred. The water gives us life. It connects us to the rest of the world through the hydrologic cycle. You can't use it as a garbage can. I mean, that's the mind shift that the new paradigm, it seems to me, will give us. So I come here saying thank you to Bhutan. Thank you for doing what you're doing, because this isn't happening around the world. And even though you're a small and compared to us, you're not a rich country. Thank you for doing it and committing to doing that.